think it's quarter past, so welcome back everyone. So it's my pleasure to announce the next session. First, I should apologize for butchering your name earlier. I'm still haven't rehearsed enough, but welcome Professor Shobhana. And we're looking forward to, well, your lecture, but I hear that's actually going to be a very interactive session, so I'm curious and looking forward to that.
Hello, so I'm Shobhana Narasimhan. I'm from the Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research in Bangalore. I'm a physicist, I'm a condensed matter physicist. So I was asked in this session to do something related to gender, diversity, etc. So I thought the best way to do it is to play something called the dilemma game. So the dilemma game it was initially conceived by Erasmus University in Rotterdam, and it's an app that you can download on your phone, but we've modified it slightly. So I will hand over to my PhD student, Garima Ahuja, who will guide you to how we're going to play it. But the thing is, we want you to form groups of 4. So please rearrange yourself so that you're in groups of 4. It's a little hard here because you can't move the chairs, but please just rearrange yourself as you see fit. But you will have to talk a lot to each other. So you do need to be groups of 4. Okay, so I'll hand over to Garima.
Groups of 3 or 4. Groups of 3 also okay?
Yeah.
Hello everyone. So for this session, I would like you all to log in to Socrative. I hope you're connected to the Wi-Fi. The details
so use
are
your
over there.
Phones.
Yes. Or you can just scan this.
Or if you have a
QR
laptop,
code.
either a phone, a smartphone or a laptop.
So you have to go to this room, AHUJA 2671, and I'll accept you in. Okay, I do not see people.
It says 24, no?
Okay, yeah. Is everybody in and can see? So I'm gonna pass these sheets to you all, and I'll explain the rules of the game. So,
One per person. So you'll see 6 dilemmas. So you can start out by reading for yourself dilemma 1.
okay, so the rules of the game is that first of all, we would like you to read these dilemmas, which are possibly going to appear in somebody's life, and you have to assume that you are in this situation and how you're going to react. You have to take any of these choices. So there are 5 options. You have to choose one, and you have to vote on the Socrative.
But before you vote, you have to tell the people in your group which of these 5 you choose. You have to choose one of the 5, okay? You may have a different choice, you can tell them, but still of the 5, you have to choose the one you like best. You have to tell the people in your group which one you will choose. Everybody has to say in your group, and you have to defend your choice. Okay? And then we will ask you later to vote.
Okay. So we would encourage you to discuss in your groups about what are your choices, what is your choice, and talk about it.
So we've lost people. We had 24 and now we are slowly going down in number. I don't understand why. It shouldn't be, yeah. No. You do need the login because you have to vote using the login. Read the first dilemma first. Yeah. You can do them one at a time. Mm. Individually. But you may change your mind based on the discussion. Supposing you know. Supposing you know. I'm asking, I'm telling you, supposing you know it. Yeah.
So I would like you all to vote now, and then we discuss with each other. So
No,
just for the first one, yeah. Everyone individually, your choices. I hope it's easy choice.
There still seem to be 3 people who've not voted. If you've not voted, can you just vote, please? Yeah, it's anonymous. I mean, we have the choice, but we chose to make it anonymous.
Okay, so let's see the results. Okay, so okay, E, you select the woman, no questions asked. And then A, you ask the woman how she will manage work along with caring for her baby and whether it is going to affect her job performance, and decide based on her answer. And nobody chose B and D, so nobody will select the man. Oh no, C, okay, 4%. All right, so does any one of you who voted for A would like to tell your views to everyone? Yeah. Sure.
So this phrasing is a bit weird, but and also it's not clear to me that you do this discussion like at what stage, but as if a woman is a like new mother, which it says that they have a small baby, then actually if the woman wants to say that actually I would prefer if you could maybe make it a part-time job or 75% job, so I don't feel guilty if you hire me if I'm less productive, which obviously is going to happen. So if they make some sort of like compromise, I would also be happy with that, for example, but that was not how it read.
But supposing she doesn't say anything, I mean,
Yeah,
that's how it is.
that's when you make a
She hasn't
conversation.
brought it up at all.
Yeah, so it was not clear how this information that she has a baby goes to the employer.
Okay, so my experience is that they rarely mention it, but everybody generally knows.
Okay.
So in that scenario, what would you do?
In what scenario? If the
Where
person
the woman
knows?
does not mention it, but you know.
No, I voted E based on based on that information. If I don't tell it, I don't bring it up, then it should be completely on what I applied.
Okay, does anybody disagree? You seem to disagree. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, even though she did not mention it, or he did not mention it, it could be he also.
No, it's a woman.
Okay. In both cases, I'm saying these argument values for both cases. But you know that information is there. Right? I mean, you go somebody's profile, inspiratory profile, and see what all things that they have done. So that information is available. This information is not publicly available, but somewhere or the other it's available. And being a very informed employer, you should know all the things probably.
Yeah, but the question is, if you know it, does that affect your decision?
Decision to right away offer versus to ask few more questions and then offer, that changes. So I'll ask few more questions.
Like what?
Like how will she manage? I mean, this is how will she manage? That is a question. But I'll first ask what is the thing that you're looking for out of this job, and if that aligns with our philosophy or our way of hiring, yes.
So can I ask one thing? You said or she or he. If you had a male postdoc and you know that he and his partner have just had a baby, will you ask the same questions?
Yes.
You will?
Yes.
You're sure?
I mean, how do I prove this?
No, I'm just asking you to think for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Does
Because
anybody want to respond to what he said?
Can I ask, if you knew that the candidate has a ailing parent who needs a lot of care, will you ask the same question?
Probably no, because
Why? What's different?
depends on the how much ailment is there.
Yeah, it's
bedridden.
It's bedridden. It needs constant care.
See, you can hire a nurse to do the caring, but for the mother and father, and still do your job.
Yeah, you can hire a nanny for the baby also.
No,
right?
you can't. I mean,
Why?
that doesn't work so well.
Why can't you?
Why?
And that doesn't work so well. I mean, it's not.
No, many people do, but
least-
why can't you hire a full-time nanny?
You can, but I mean, for the babies, it doesn't work that way, I guess.
Why not?
Because I mean, you can't trust a nanny with your kid.
But you can trust a nurse to,
But you can trust a nurse with your parent.
That I can, because they
no, but see, what I want to ask is that your decision to make, or is it the prospective postdoc's decision to make?
that's the postdoc's decision to make, but generally people don't do it.
No, lots of people do it.
No, see, I'll ask them how will you manage this? If they say I am okay with a nanny, then okay.
I think if a woman is applying
Why
and she
should I
knows,
impose my
Okay, so
Yeah.
well, what do people think? Is it okay to ask a candidate, how will you look after your baby?
is it okay to ask at all about
No,
personal
it's
questions?
not how will you look after your baby. How will you manage this job?
And she says, what do you mean, I'll just manage? What would you say? Have you ever been, are you a postdoc? Are you a student? What are you?
I am a student and I have worked also before.
Okay, so did they ask you how you'll manage your job and what would you have answered? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just having a
So
discussion.
it has so happened that I was preparing for my PhD position exams and things while I was working. So yeah, I have been asked this question by the HR team as well.
And what did you say?
I said, yes, that is my personal time. I can always schedule my things for studying later than the office
Okay,
timings.
so if the woman said this to you, would you accept it?
Sorry?
If the woman said, that's my personal thing, I will manage.
No. I mean, not getting the point. I mean, I can schedule my studies later time of the day, but I can't schedule taking care of the baby later time of the day. It has to be taken care all the time.
Does anybody want to respond to that? Is there anyone here who has a baby? Nobody in the room? Yeah.
How many babies have you seen in a campus? I mean, there are women employees, they must be having babies. Have you seen any baby in the campus with them? How many times? Many times? I mean, but it's not extremely common either that we see crying babies in the campus. I mean, people typically find arrangements, right? I mean,
By small baby, I mean the baby just the baby who cries at night for no reason.
Yeah, Shruti.
I just want to say that all of these are very personal choices. How you bring your children up, how you take care of ailing parents, how you're a caregiver. I don't think employers have any business dictating how you make these personal choices in your life, whether you're a woman or a man. So there should be nothing in the employing process that forces people to make choices that are seen as socially acceptable. You should make, it's a personal choice how you do these things. Family matter. If someone brings it up in their interview, then it's something that they want you to take into consideration in some way. And you can ask them, in what way do you want me to take this into consideration, right? But in some random way, if you know that this person has some personal circumstances, but they don't want you to take that into consideration, it should be illegal to take it under consideration.
So I have a question about that. Supposing you have HR guidelines which say you cannot ask any such personal questions. Do you think that might actually damage someone in a situation, because then people will just automatically choose the man? Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think that means that you shouldn't,
No.
you should start asking
Yeah.
such questions. Yeah, that's a problem with the
Yeah.
way that people have biases in employment.
Anybody else wants something to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I would also like to add that it's, I think, unreasonable to even to come to the conclusion that this person is going to be less productive, because you never know how people handle different situations, and a lot of things are are up in your personal life, and it's not the job of the employer to evaluate whether this person is, what is their peak performance and where they are at, and so on and so forth. I think that's a completely unreasonable thing to think that this person is going to be less productive and we should make amends for it. Unless the person
that's
brings
unrealistic. It's definitely going to be less productive. Like on average, I think it's just too unrealistic
but you never
to
know,
assume
right?
that they will not.
You never know, because this person in consideration might not be. How do you know? Because you can't make a judgment based on the people that you've encountered in your life, and so on and so forth. Also, there might be something else up with the man's personal life that you don't know about. So just because you know that this person has a baby, you shouldn't be judging that they would be less productive than the other candidate.
If the man has a baby, any very strong change in somebody's life is going to affect their other parts of life. That's just going to
So,
be
Ekta, what I want to say to that is that I've seen, I mean, I've been in my job for many years. There are people who work shorter hours and people who work longer hours. The ones who work shorter hours are often because of family commitments. But I don't think they're necessarily less productive. I think you can be effectively productive only a certain number of hours. Those who stay long hours, they spend a lot of time on coffee breaks, gossiping, things like that. And the actual number of productive hours is not that different, I feel. You don't agree?
especially if you are just alone or just like the two of you are not with your parents. I mean, you have to take care of a new person, basically. It's going to change everything in your life. So I think that's going to affect it for sure.
So should that then affect hiring decisions or not?
That's why I answered. Like, if the woman is not bringing it up, then she.
But see, as a postdoc, I mean, this is not a permanent position, okay? This is a postdoc. 2 years, you have a grant. You have to show at the end of the grant that you have a certain number of publications and all. So is it then okay to hire someone you know is not going to be as productive, according to your reasoning?
We can go on and on, but basically that's why there are these breaks that a person can take and so on. And usually nowadays there are these initiatives that take into account these major life changes that happened during, and that like whatever productivity you had, that will be taken into account along with that. And I think that's personally, that's I prefer that basically. I don't want to just say that I will be as productive as I was before, because I know that that's not going to happen. It's not possible.
So those initiatives, they take into account when you're evaluating the postdoc, but when you're evaluating the PI and the PI's grant, they usually don't take
Also,
that.
no, I think it also happens, but I'm not a PI, so I can't really answer it. But I think The PIs can answer.
I don't really have an answer. I see that the point and the consideration, and that kind of creates some pressure and also in the thinking process along the lines we heard. But I wanted to comment or ask something related. Closely related situation is that even after you've hired someone, they could go on a maternity or paternity break. And I think some grants then take this into account and allow for a break and then some extension in time. But I'm curious to know actually how, maybe this is going a bit too far, but how widespread that is in your experience, if most grants allow such breaks
At
or
least
not.
in India, they do not allow it for a postdoc. They can allow it for if you have a faculty position, for example, but they don't allow it for a postdoc. You're not even allowed maternity leave for most postdoc positions.
So this means then since the question was asked for the PIs on such grants, that creates more of a kind of indirect pressure because they have a risk, so to speak, which could be that someone they hire, they might go on a break or might become less available.
I don't know. I mean, this is my experience, but other people may have different. Yeah.
I mean, I want to say two things. So one is that regardless of whether it affects productivity or not, one thing maybe many of us agree is that women have a societal pressure to have children. I mean, in India for sure. And then if I ask a woman in an interview if they can manage it, then it definitely adds to the pressure or makes them feel like, I mean, it is a bit like putting them in their position, kind of, which is a very uncomfortable thing to do. And the second thing I want to say is that, of course, productivity is important in a 2-year grant and everyone has to get grants. But I think that PIs are a part of society. And I think it is their responsibility, whether they succeed or not, to ensure that they have enough grants and enough funding so that they don't have to create an unequal place thinking about an individual grant or an individual postdoc, because they have come there from a lot of resources clearly. If they have made it to that point, then I think they owe it to create an atmosphere where a diversity of people can develop. And I think that should be their goal, to set up such a system. That's what I think.
Okay, so I wanted to say that for this whole dilemma thing, I'm not going to say there's a right answer and a wrong answer. I may have my personal choice of answer, but I think I may even disagree with someone, but I don't say your answer is wrong. I think we have to move on to the next dilemma, but hopefully we can continue these discussions over lunch.
Yeah, so let's move on to the next one. So this is, I'll read it once. You have received a letter that you have been selected for a faculty position in a very prestigious institution. The head of the department phones you and tells you that there was a candidate of a different caste who was going to be selected, but the head did not let it happen. The head proudly tells you that we all need to back each other as a community and that only people like us should reach higher positions. This suggests strongly that there was discrimination in your favor in the selection process. The head is a very powerful person in your field whom you hesitate to upset. What do you do?
So obviously this caste business is particular to India. So if you're from another country and you're not familiar with caste, you can substitute ethnicity or religion and then think, what would you do? Suvrat, you can just join any group. We're playing a game. I would just encourage all of you to discuss, please, okay?
Okay, let's vote. Please vote. Okay, let's see what are people voting
It's still
about.
only 18.
Yeah.
Don't show till they vote. They'll get influenced.
Okay. 8 people.
Okay, 8 people still haven't voted, so. Oh,
Okay.
you can just try refreshing. Yeah, I think we can go ahead.
Okay, let's see. Okay. So, E.
Oh, this is really interesting because
Yeah.
opinions are really divided.
So 31% people say you decline the job and use social media to write about your experience in caste discrimination in academia. Okay. So I would like someone to tell who has voted for E, and I would like to ask you, will this not affect your career? I mean, the person is very powerful.
So I think the answer will vary upon which stage of career you are in and how desperate you are for the job. But no, I think even then, like, okay, how many years? Okay, I don't want to go there. But anyway.
Your first job.
Yes,
say.
I get that. Yeah. So I'm going by these words that you've been selected for a faculty position in a very prestigious institute. So that means you are doing very good. That means you will have options in less prestigious institutes. So if that's the option, then you can actually go out and try to do something.
But once you have put it on social media, do you think you will be labeled as a troublemaker and then you won't get any more offers? I'm just playing devil's advocate. Though.
Yes, I feel, yeah, that's definitely true. But it's
does not say you cannot.
Yeah, okay.
no,
But
anonymity won't
it will
help.
be pretty obvious, no? I mean, the head knows and you know. So
What we were discussing at least here, that rather than social media, at least in this case, there will be actual policy things that you can actually rely on. So if it is, let's say, SC/ST caste thing, then there are like actual, you can make a police case out of it. Okay, you can get into contact with the person who was not selected, and you can, in principle, even make a case out of it. Yes, you will be labeled as a troublemaker, and it is going to be difficult. But I'm just relying on this, that if, in fact, you're doing very good, then you will still have chances. I still have that much faith in academia that it won't happen that you won't get any job anywhere.
okay, so I have a question here. So we've said the caste, okay? Now, did you all assume that the caste is a dominant caste, a privileged caste, or was there anyone who assumed that the caste is actually a disadvantaged caste? And do the same rules apply in both cases? I've not said anywhere. So I have to admit that when I first wrote it for another session, I had in my mind that this is a sort of dominant and privileged caste. But then when we actually played it, there was someone there who was from a disadvantaged caste and who assumed that the head and the applicant were from a disadvantaged caste. And then that totally changed the dynamics of how one views this, you know.
It might even make it a little more realistic, because I was just about to say that very few people would discriminate in this way and give you such an open goal. I mean, I obviously chose E, but that's because it's such an open goal. You know, very few, at least I have not met someone who does stuff like this and then openly admits it. Now maybe
You mean it's done much more subtly?
Much more subtly. Now, on the other hand, if you thought of the case where it was a disadvantaged caste, then you might even think there was some justification for it. So you might say, and then someone could say, you know, yeah, right. So that might actually make it more realistic, and then one might choose a different option. But
the keyword here is, I think, only people like us, because if only was not present, I think you can take it as somebody coming from underprivileged class, but it looks like that it's coming from a privileged class person.
Anybody else? Anyone wants to say anything? I mean, the people who've chosen other options, so why don't you tell us, yeah.
I was narrating a small thing here, which is that like some history. In our institute, we did like a boycott of some professor who was accused of like caste discrimination and in fact taken action upon, but was invited for a colloquium. And then we boycotted it. And we knew the institute would be after us, so we did it in a sort of a discreet way. They did not know who were involved. And in the end, director called a meeting of all the students and said that I have all the resources of the institute behind me. If I find who was involved, I will first take action, and then I have the institute resources to fight the case, whereas you are a private individual. So this is like the reality of Indian academia. So I chose D because ideally I would like to choose E, but then if I am not anonymous on social media, I think there would be a defamation case, and I don't have the resources to fight such a case. So that's what I think.
But even in D, you've explained to the head, so the head knows why you are declining it, right? That's okay?
That is okay, yeah. I'm willing to suffer the consequences at a career level, but at a level where it's like, it kind of legally affect my existence outside jail, then yeah.
I think this is a bit of a problem, and we can of course make it a little more realistic in some other ways. You know, rather than in individual writing, you could think of a situation where there was a broader community thing on this, and then would you sign on to that? And it is true that in Indian academia, many people are very scared and do not. But of course, there's no reason to be. You know, one should sign on to these things, and it's. Even on the specific incident, there could be a, you know, and that's in fact usually how these things are raised. I mean, these are not completely hypothetical things when they happen, maybe not in this way, but it's done by means always of a broader community action, not by one person saying something. And then, you know, that is.
I'm just curious, is there anyone in the room who feels caste is irrelevant in Indian academia? No. Whether caste is irrelevant in Indian academia? No. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter what caste you are. You have seen. Okay. Anybody wants to disagree with that? See, a lot of people tell me caste doesn't matter, but in my opinion, I don't know if I have benefited explicitly from it, but I have had people in academia, people who I was often very surprised that they did it. They have mentioned to me that, say, they and I are the same caste or subcaste or whatever. So this suggests to me that it's very much there in their mind. And how it influences their decisions, I do not know. But it clearly matters to them. Garima, shall we move to the next one?
Okay, so we move to the third one. Okay. So you are running a successful group and you receive an email from a student from an unknown university in a least developed country. The student wishes to visit your lab for 6 months to carry out a part of their PhD thesis work. The student sounds enthusiastic but seems poorly trained and is not fluent in English. What do you do?
Of course, nowadays they would have put it through ChatGPT and you won't even know whether they're fluent in English or not. So,
Okay, let's vote for this one. Are you voting? I ask you all, please vote and then we can discuss. Okay, please put in your votes if you haven't, and let's see the results. Okay. So again, we have all the options at least. Okay. 30%. So you assign one of your PhD students or postdoc to help the person remotely. So some people want to select the student and some don't want to select. So does anyone of you want to share your thoughts and which option did you select?
I mean, it would be nice if someone who hasn't spoken before speaks. Just
How many of you did actually ignore the email?
but you can't, it's supposed to be anonymous, remember?
But we are discussing, like they can tell. Okay.
So I think what realistically happens is people go with A in real life because, well, again, I'm not faculty, I'm not senior enough to make conclusions of this, but I imagine that people get a lot of emails like that. And in real life, they ignore the emails that come from weaker candidates, even if they realize that it might be like socially responsible to invest some time into doing this. So yeah, I think that's the reality. And I think, yeah, we discussed a lot in this group. I think C is the morally correct answer because again, you cannot really devote a lot of your time to every of such emails if you get a lot of them. And if they like, so there's kind of a practical thing to do, you outsource the selection process to some like scholarship committee and do this. But yeah, again, I think the reality is, so this poll does not represent what's actually happening in real life. I don't think I've ever met a person who like assigned a PhD student to a postdoc to like work with such an application. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
Does anybody else have to say something?
I've done all of these at various times. I get a lot. Nowadays, most common is E. And for example, someone wrote to me from Uzbekistan a couple of years ago, and I didn't have time myself, but I assigned my students, and then they asked me if I could go teach for a month, and I said I can't go for a month, but two of my students went there for a month, and they taught the group there. And my students had a great time, and the group also benefited. But I usually try not to ignore. I try at least to reply, but depends on my bandwidth. Sometimes, I mean, I have had students come and visit. I've told them about various programs. For example, the World Academy of Sciences has funding, etc. So I've told them to apply for it. Sometimes I accept, sometimes I say, no, sorry, I just can't.
But in your mind, was the country actually important? Because we all get such emails and many of them come from our own country, from other places, and from other institutions which are not as well endowed. And it's a fact that there is inequity in India. And we are not in a position often to assign E at least consistently. I mean, maybe once in a while in a very special case, one does D or E or C, but in reality, it is true that on average, we get of the order of 2 or 3 such emails a day, probably. So several hundred such requests a year, many of which are coming from our own country. And what do we do about it? We actually, at least am I honest, I chose B and I try to do B. But it's true that many times I probably realistically also do A.
Yeah, I don't know what determines which one I choose. It might just depend on the luck of the draw for the person. I have been teaching a lot in Africa, so I get a lot of letters from students from Africa. But then, for example, people have scolded me for that, saying there's so many students in India who need help, and why are you going and helping students in Africa? So I don't know. I mean, especially, I guess I'm more likely to respond if there's someone I've met, or if if I've taught them at some workshop, or their advisor is someone I know, etc. But if there's some kind of personal connection, I'm more likely to reply. But
Just one thing to what you're saying, it's all often not a question of funding, of course. It's a question of office space and accommodation and visas and many other issues. So there is a lot of effort that one would have to spend in hosting a student. And also in the case of, perhaps in the case of experiment, there's always at least a positive benefit to having any student around, whereas that might not necessarily be the case in the case of theory, where you might just, it might be beneficial for the student, but not necessarily for the group. So I mean, it would be very nice if we could have more things, but maybe morally one should do C or D, but I don't know how we would do it.
To be brutally frank, I mean, the cases where I've helped, I don't think our group has benefited much. It's something that we do to help others. But for example, my students who went to Uzbekistan, they benefited a lot as well. I mean, my students didn't learn more physics, but it was a very culturally enriching experience for them, and they got teaching experience, etc. So yeah, it's different. Yeah, it's different, but it started with some such interaction. It started with a cold email. I mean, cold as in I didn't know the person, saying, we want to know how to do such calculations, can you help us? And I assigned a student to help them, and that's how the interaction started. Shruti, wanted to say something?
Not faculty. Anyone who would like to change that, please let me know. I am not faculty, but if anyone wants to change that, yeah. But I don't know if this is the way it was meant, but I think assigning a PhD student or postdoc, they are there for their professional development. So if this is an opportunity that they want to take advantage of course they should do that. And it's very positive. They can create positive change. But there is a power dynamic between the head of a group and the PhD students and the postdocs in the group. And so if you ask them to do something like this, they will feel like they have to do it. It will take time out of their professional activities that will go into their career development. They're all early career. So I think one needs to be very careful about how these opportunities are presented to younger early career people, because it could negatively impact the amount of time they have that they're spending on research. That's one thing. The second thing I wanted to say was actually about again, not faculty. But I know someone who their way of dealing with emails rather than ignoring it is to have a preset, pre-written email that has a list of scholarships, a list of textbooks, a list of resources. So they just have this one email that they respond to everyone with. And I think it's better than nothing, because then the student, if they can apply for something, if they want to read, if they want to follow up, there is an opportunity. And it weeds out maybe the less serious emails.
That's nice. Yeah.
We have to move on to the next one because the time is a bit short.
Garima,
so-
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
If I ask you to do something like conduct a dilemma session, do you feel you can say no?
I can say what my opinion is. Yeah, you give me
You have
that
no choice
freedom.
but to tell me that.
No, I can always say to you
Yeah.
when I feel truly, yeah. Okay. So the next one is a well-known leader in your field whom you admire has made a joke about women while giving a talk. The joke really made you uncomfortable. You suspect that a few other people also found it inappropriate, but no one speaks up. The majority of the audience, including your friends and colleagues, take it lightly and laugh. What do you do? Okay, so let's vote for this one. Please put in your votes.
Your number of students is going on increasing.
I think it's, they re-log in and it increases.
Please vote.
Okay, so
Can you all please vote if you haven't voted, because we're running out of time.
okay, let's see what are the results. Okay. Okay, so nobody chooses B. Most people choose C, which is to choose to speak to the person after the talk personally and tell them that the joke was offensive. Okay. Okay, some people also let the joke slide. Okay, and some people also speak up immediately. Okay, so now I want to know your views. So,
Can we hear from the group on the last row? We haven't heard from you at all.
Yeah, I think we went for C, and we thought we'd do it quite sort of gently and subtly. Maybe talk about something else first, butter him up a bit, assuming it's a him, and then maybe at the end just say, "Oh, I didn't think that joke was quite appropriate." So.
Yeah.
In this situation, so I'm part of the targeted, right? I'm the butt of the joke in this situation because I'm a woman. And I feel like to me in this situation, the speaker I have labeled as a bigot. So, okay, I know this about this leader in the field. What feels more important is that other members of the community tell me that they noticed something wrong. So, like, trying to convince this well-known leader in the field that they should stop making jokes like this doesn't feel like it will have much impact. But if other people come and say, oh, I noticed this. I didn't think it was funny. I myself don't hold that opinion. That feels sort of like a more supportive course of action than anything else. So I chose D, I guess.
Okay, anybody else? Suvrat.
I mean, of course, this works also for other situations, not just for the case of women. You could have it.
Yeah, I was going to ask that if it would change if it was, say, a joke against Dalits or black people or something.
No, for instance, there's a well-known professor who would teach us, who would often say, in physics, we are in the position of Columbus. And I would find that incredibly offensive because I thought Columbus was a genocidal maniac. You know, you should not, you would not hold him up as an example of an explorer, but from a certain, you know, colonial privileged perspective, you think, you know, there's a perspective of...
I had the same discussion in Italy about a month back, and people were like, what? You don't admire Columbus?
Exactly. So I would find it very offensive. But of course, the point is that, you know, even then I might still have chosen A, but not because of the reason that is given in A. So this question is a little troubling because you might let the joke slide, maybe because there isn't any point in some sense in talking to the person and trying to explain, but not because one would be ridiculed, but because, you know, maybe this is just not the way change happens. For instance, I'm sure this person now doesn't give this example anymore, but because there's been an entire movement that has made this point, you know, because there's been the entire Rhodes Must Fall or decolonization or Black Lives Matter movement that has changed the perspective of A. I don't know if, so I feel that a lot of these issues, or there was a Me Too movement that changed some of these things correctly, but it requires more
but
than...
if you see what's happening in the US, I'm sure celebrating Columbus Day will become compulsory now.
Right. So, but you know, part of that is also because people, exactly, you see, because part of that is I feel that because there was a lot of choice
Political
of D in many
correctness,
cases,
yeah.
and D might not be appropriate because it then leads to this conservative backlash, which is what we are seeing, where people say you're just being politically correct, and so maybe, you know, I don't know. So I kind of, no, or not D, yeah, D, I would be a little worried about if it was really a joke as opposed to saying something much more inappropriate.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a slippery slope, right? I mean, you let something slide and then how much do you tolerate?
Action, which was when I entered the room, I felt much more strongly, where there was actually something which was done. In the case of speech, I feel it's slightly different.
Anybody else? Yeah, Ekta.
So I'm one of the people who chose E because I wouldn't let it slide, but I also wouldn't take like actively an action. What I would actually do in this scenario is, and I wouldn't speak to that person because it's clearly like, there is no use actually. Like I can't talk to that person because if they found it appropriate to actually make this joke, then they will not change their mind if I just tell them in person. What I would do if they're speaking, and if people are laughing, I would immediately also maybe say something funny and try to say, okay, so I see people find it funny too. Okay, I see, it's not funny or something like this, but in a light way that like negates it. Like I would actually do it in practice, but not like I wouldn't be fine with being quoted as the person who would take action against every little joke, like if they call it little, but I would be fine as being labeled as the person who doesn't find such jokes funny. That's fine by me.
So I want to ask people, supposing the joke was about a race, like say black people, or supposing it was about a caste like Dalits, do you think one has to respond more strongly than if it's a joke about women?
You can put any category there. If the
Makes
joke
no
is,
difference.
If I feel it's not appropriate, I would say it's not appropriate.
But not appropriate, does that depend on the category being mocked or made fun of?
No.
I'm asking.
No, it doesn't.
Because my impression is people will tolerate a lot of jokes about women, but they won't tolerate jokes about other groups. It's much more acceptable to make jokes about women.
I am just answering what I would do personally. If I find that joke inappropriate for whatever context, I will also try to make a joke negating that I would actually do it.
I think it also depends on who you are. I mean, for a student, and if it's a powerful person telling the joke, it makes it difficult for a student to immediately, speak up against it. I mean, even though you find it inappropriate. But say you are a faculty and you say, I don't know, maybe it's easier to, you're already powerful, say, then you can maybe say it. That's what I feel.
Okay, yeah.
As somebody who answered D, I feel like what you brought up with regards to if you change the person from a woman, like change the subject from a woman to a race or something like that, I think that would affect whether or not I would go with option D. Because I feel like if everybody around me laughed at the joke, it's much easier, like you said, to like make fun of women and to laugh at the expense of women than it is to laugh at any other minority group. So I feel like it would be much more, there would be a higher chance of me being able to convince others that this was not something that we should take easily and we should actually do something about it. Whereas if this was about race or caste, in the case of India, if I see somebody laughing at a casteist joke, I don't think I'd be able to convince them over a conversation that that's a bad thing for them.
Probably Sardarji jokes. So there was, it's true actually, right? This is a fact that in which were not about women, and that I don't think I'm sure we have all heard Sardarji jokes. So this is, and then most people laugh and they let it slide, right? And most people don't even realize the communal backdrop of that when those jokes came about. Why there was a communal and how offensive they are and so on. But
so in that case, I feel like if you talk to them and you're like, this is something that is actually hurtful to like these, especially if you have a Sardar friend there, then you might be able to get your point better across to them, as if it was a different minority group. Because there are some groups where if you feel like it's okay to make fun of them, then you're so far gone that there's no really bringing you back. Whereas I feel like with some other groups, it's more normalized. So you can convince people more easily, from what I've seen at least.
Okay, so with the time constraint, I think we should move on to maybe one last, let's see, dilemma 6.
So we're skipping
For-
dilemma 5, okay? Or would you rather, is there anyone who would prefer dilemma 5? Yeah, but even so, I think we'll just do one. So 5 or 6, does anybody have a preference?
Yeah, then
5. You prefer 5? Is there? Okay, we'll do 5 then.
Okay, so 5th one, you and your partner are in the same field of research and often write papers together. However, some people say that most of the work is done by you and not your partner. You have a stronger scientific record than your partner, and you feel that the work you do together is mostly motivated and guided by you, but not always. You both have built a good understanding while working and have a really good ongoing projects. What do you do? Okay, let's quickly vote and have a discussion. So please vote. We must have at least 20,
I mean,
25.
I overheard the conversation in some groups. I do realize there's a problem. All these options assume you have the agency and your partner has no agency whatsoever. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see the results. Please put in the votes if you
Please
haven't.
vote if you haven't done so.
Okay, so these are the results. Okay, C. Okay, so you let the things go on as they are, even if the people gossip and your partner might feel bad about it. So you. But
Okay,
you
so
have
this
to
is the
care.
first time we have a clear winner, I think.
Yeah. So does anyone want to say about if they have chosen C, where you let your partner feel bad about it?
Okay, so first of all, I think every answer other than C is really disrespectful towards your partner. Well, D is just unrealistic. Like, you're not gonna switch fields in the middle of your research career, and everything else is like, yeah, kind of.
Lots of people switch fields.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. I cannot imagine this for me. But then in A, B,
Wait,
and E.
Just a second. Are you making any assumptions about gender of the two people?
No.
No. Okay.
So, and again, you don't let your partner decide in any of the options A, B, and E. And I also like a grown-up
Yes, I
person in
understand.
academia.
Yeah, I accept that. Yeah.
So then basically it's just elimination. All other answers are like unacceptable for me personally.
No, but I just wanted to give some context. I mean, since we are in ICTS, so there is a faculty here who has written about this issue, Sumati. Ashok is Sumati's partner, so Ashok also attended many lectures here. So there is a book called Lilavati's Daughters, which was coordinated by Indian Academy of Science on Indian women scientists. So she has written there about, I mean, this is also, although it's the other way around. So she has written there about how people spoke that the work she did, Ashok told her, and then she switched the fields. She switched her field, and now, I mean, she's an established researcher in condensed matter. So I mean, so this has happened, and there is like an article one can read about it if you're curious.
Anybody else? Okay, so
yeah. So we should wind up the session. We thank you for participating very enthusiastically, and thank you.
Thanks so much for this. I think this is very meaningful discussions that we had.